So it was 35 years ago. Becky and I were in Israel. It was my first year of rabbinical school. She came along for the ride. And she worked in an underserved Mizrahi community in Jerusalem. It's called Musrara. I volunteered weekly at a center for children with special needs in Jerusalem as well. And both of those experiences for us gave us insights into the challenges and triumphs of marginalized communities. Now, the Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews have been marginalized in Israel's past, for sure. In the early days when they arrived from Arab countries, speaking their accented Hebrew, the uniquely accented Hebrew, the Ashkenazi authorities shunted them, those new immigrants, off to border towns, off to the places where they didn't want their own people to live. Before 1967, this neighborhood that Becky worked in, Musrara, was right on the border between Jordan and Israel, right in Jerusalem. It was sort of almost, they weren't quite no man's land, but they were just on this side of no man's land. And so these dark-skinned, Arabic-speaking immigrants found themselves as human buffers between hostile Jordanians and Israel. The fledgling state at that time had few resources nor awareness to devote to their integration into the society. And the truth is probably that the mainstream Ashkenazi, Western European administrative state looked at these more primitive immigrants with a little bit of condescension and didn't try too hard to integrate them. So the result was that by the mid-1970s, there were widespread vocal and often angry demonstrations throughout Israel. The Mizrahi Jews demanded that their challenges of poverty, of a poor educational system, of lack of access to the services be addressed. And astoundingly, much of the rhetoric mirrored the civil rights language in the United States. They presented themselves as dark Jews. Menachem Begin was the prime minister, and he responded. And jointly with the diaspora Jewish communities and the local municipalities, a program called Project Renewal was created. And the idea was that communities together from Israel, together with communities from the United States, would work together with the people in the towns to meet the needs of the physical and social needs of the community. So Becky worked in an outcome of that. It was called a matnas, a community center. And there, despite years of progress, she encountered Israeli Jewish poverty. She learned to speak Hebrew with a little bit of that Arabic-inflected accent. She saw what it was like for people to attend underfunded schools, to live in crowded housing, underemployment. And then she also saw, of course, at the Matnas, how Israel was actually addressing the challenges presented by that particular Israeli version of poverty. So over the subsequent 45 years since Project Renewal began, they've added now in Israel Arab and Druze and Ethiopian and ultra-Orthodox communities under the Project Renewal umbrella. Much has been accomplished, and of course, like all of these things, much needs to be done still. Israel's Arab population, about 20%, still is challenged by underperforming schools, high crime rates, and underemployment. Ultra-Orthodox poverty is rampant, and the Ethiopian community of all the immigrant communities to Israel has had the most difficult time getting out of poverty and integrating fully into Israeli society. And unfortunately, often racial issues continue to be sort of the identifying feature that keeps people in the situations they're in. So now, that's Becky's story, now my story. I went to Alin weekly, Alin Hospital, where those children with special needs were rehabilitated and offered all the support they needed. I quickly became connected to an 8-year-old girl named Mirala. Mirala had one limb that was fully functional. Her other limbs were poorly formed and quite weak. But she had an amazing mouth, and she used it to her advantage. She was loud, she was boisterous, she was full of personality, and she would assertively ask. She'd learned English, she'd learned Arabic, she'd learned Hebrew, in any one of those languages for what she wanted. And I adored her. The swimming pool was her refuge from gravity that was pulling her down. And with a combination of floaties strategically placed on her body and her kicking of that one strong leg, she would scoot around the pool and cause havoc wherever she went. So when Purim came along, during my year in rabbinical school. I got a pass to take Mirala off-site, something which, of course, could never happen in this generation. But we hopped a bus, carried the wheelchair, put it on the bus, and Mirala too. Thankfully, she weighed under 60 pounds, so she wasn't too bad to heft into the bus. We visited Purim celebrations all around Jerusalem, and we even went to the rabbinical schools, my rabbinical student, my co-rabbinical students' Purim spiel, and Mirala was a big hit at the rabbinical school Purim spiel. So over the years, Israeli organizations like Alin, like Beit Izzy Shapiro, which we support at WISE, like the Israel Paris Sports Center, which we also support at WISE, have achieved incredible success with handicapped people in Israel by carefully observing and carefully listening to their clients and working with them to design supportive devices that combine the high tech with the best of Israeli ingenuity. All right, a third story now. This is a story about life in the United States, and this one doesn't have such a happy ending, unfortunately. When I was in elementary school back in New Jersey, my mom enrolled our family in a program called the Fresh Air Fund. If you're a New Yorker, maybe you remember the Fresh Air Fund. It was a well-meaning program that invited suburban white families to host black kids from distressed and impoverished neighborhoods and inner cities. So we had Eddie come stay with us for a couple of weeks every summer until he didn't. And when I asked my mom why Eddie had stopped coming, her response to me, and I was like 8 years old, 9 years old, she said, well, it just wasn't working out. In retrospect, that comes as no surprise. Take a poor black kid, plunk him into a wealthy, suburban, pretty much all-white community, prepare neither for the cultural differences of those two communities, and right? The better question is, who possibly thought that was a good idea? All right, so now let me weave all this together. I'm sharing the stories of my experiences with marginalized communities to make a point about what we might learn from this month's corresponding observances of Black History Month and Jewish Disabilities Awareness and Inclusivity Month. Both observances call our attention to both the achievements of these communities and the need for further progress. The relative success of Project Renewal in Israel and the advances in the empowerment of the disabled in Israel contrast with the Fresh Air Fund in one very important way. There are many, but I'm going to pick just one. And it's the difference between being a true ally with those who we seek to support and being a well-meaning savior. Now, clearly, it's far better to be an ally than a savior. So let me explain. Here's what congregational rabbi and human rights advocate Barbara Penzer suggests about being an ally. To be an ally, she says, is to connect our care and concern with an honest admission of what we know and don't know about the other. How we show up for one person may be different from how we respond to another. How we engage with a group of people will have a different shape than how we ally with an individual. The ally relationship demands that we become curious. Allies listen wholeheartedly to each other's needs, even when that listening is uncomfortable. To be an ally is to listen to the people who we desire to support. Allies don't swoop in and offer salvation. Allies don't tell the community what it needs or tell a person what they need. The failure of the Fresh Air Fund was that it offered white suburban homes as a saving refuge to inner city kids without discussing anything with the parents or the kids about what they actually want or needed for the summer. The success, even within the limitations of it didn't achieve all the success everyone dreamed of Project Renewal, was that members of the identified communities were actually involved in the planning as equals of their own path to change. And the head, just to connect it with also for the disabled, the head of the Israeli Paris Sports Center in Israel is a disabled athlete. Who better to listen to and put in charge of the program than someone who actually knows what he needs and is able to listen empathically to the needs of those who are in the program? And to be an ally requires the exercise of that empathy muscle. And empathy requires us to listen and to seek to understand the circumstances of those we seek to support. When we're empathic, we don't impose solutions. We don't presume to know what the other needs. We sit with that person or with the people, and we listen to their concerns, to their desires, to their challenges, and we commit ourselves to be constant learners. And they guide us to developing solutions to the challenges they might face and the needs that are uniquely theirs. To be an ally is to be non-judgmental and non-patronizing. It requires us to suppress that natural human tendency to project our own solutions onto another. And it's difficult. It takes emotional effort and it takes self-reflection. But if we truly want to work with those who would benefit from our involvement, then learning to be an effective ally is what makes all the difference. There's a little ditty that our campers sing which captures this idea beautifully. I'm not going to sing it, I'm just going to recite some of it. Sing it. Oh, well, yeah, right. Thanks, boss. Don't walk in front, I'll let Cantor sing it later. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend. Now, it's been attributed to Camus, but I couldn't find any evidence that he actually said it. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend. It's the best advice we can give our kids. And it can help us do our best work as we support others whose needs are different from ours, as we support others achieve their own success in the world. Can you hear that song? So may it be.